Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Build America, the podcast that's capturing the heartbeat of construction and design and interior design as well. And we're excited today. I'm your host, Kerry Smith Buck, owner of Construction News and Review. And we have with us this morning Yvette Paris, who is president of a firm in Collinsville, Illinois called Lauer Facility Planning. And just excited about the discussion today about what Yvette has many years of expertise on spaces and how to make them functional, but also very attractive. And for companies on a budget across the healthcare office and other spectrums. Yvette, we're glad to have you here today to talk about the importance of collaboration to make sure these spaces are what people are looking for. Welcome to Build America.
Thank you, Carrie. It's nice to connect with you. I appreciate it. I know that we go back some years, so it's really great to see where you're at now and to have the opportunity to have this conversation since it's so impactful, I think, for design and the kind of just the world as where we are today.
Great. Yeah, we appreciate your time being on. And I should have shared about your role. You've been with Lauer how many years, and when did you become president and really owner of the company?
I've been with Lauer since June of 2020, or excuse me, 2006. Gosh, that's hard to even remember. It'll be 19 years this summer. I moved here from Southern California when my husband got out of the military and we moved to the area so he could go to school. And I started as a very green designer right out of college with Jane Lauer, who was the founder of the company. The company was about 10 years old at the time, and we were in Edwardsville, Illinois, just about 20 minutes up the road from here. And I started part-time for her and entry level, basically did anything she asked me to do. And from there on, I began to grow in my role, and she gave me leadership opportunities to gain some new strengths. And I became design director in 2014. That year, I also gained my NCIDQ, which is the professional qualification exam for interior designers, so I could become a registered interior designer in Illinois. And then around 2019, she began to discuss with me her succession plan because her husband had retired and she was looking for a way to pass on her business. So we began to discuss me taking it over. And it took a little while for me to have the confidence to get there. I had a lot of support from my husband and other friends and family, but one of the things that was contingent upon was having the operational support, because I knew after that many years, I knew how to do the design, I knew how to do how that business side, but I never really had gotten involved too much with the financial matters and so forth. So I had asked one of our longtime employees, April, now Dan, formerly Grapper House, to join me as an owner. And she agreed to do that. All of the documents were set in place and things were done on a legal level. And at the end of 2020, we all signed the documents and exchanged money and so forth. And we began our ownership journey, both taking 10% shares. And so it was staggered over a 4-year period of time. So each year I purchased more shares and April's remained at her initial 10%. So I became president at the beginning of 2023 or 4. Kind of hard to
Life goes by
remember.
fast, doesn't it?
But at the end of last year, 2024, I finalized the last payment and effectively became the 90% shareholder and am now gotten the full ownership position. So it doesn't really feel a lot different because of the way we did the buyout was staggered and made it comfortable for me, because I like to tell people that I'm not a natural entrepreneur and I'm not generally a risk taker, but I've learned to take more risks, particularly when it comes to putting myself outside of my comfort zone and doing things that are maybe not in my normal character, because that's generally where change happens. I've learned that can be beneficial while it can be scary. So this is certainly outside of my comfort zone to do this, but I'm very grateful to have been afforded the opportunity to have come from where I began, which was very modest, and then to be sitting here in this seat today, running a company that we now have 10 staff, which is biggest the company's
Wow.
been. And it's still small, but we like it that way. We like to say that we're small but mighty, because currently, until recently we were 100% women, which so there's a
I wondered about that.
and we
Yeah.
are a
Okay.
certified woman-owned business. I do have
Okay.
one part-time staff who helps with some service, but otherwise just a bunch of gals here. So I think we differentiate ourselves in the market being selling furniture, but primarily focusing on design because the foundation of our company is design. Jane was a certified interior designer as well, and she was raised in the industry and construction, learned the design build method when she was with another firm, and then started this company in 1996 with that mindset. We like to hope that we approach things differently. None of my staff are salespeople, quote unquote, and nobody makes any commissions. So we try to focus on the needs of the project, the objectives, their mission statement, whatever the budget is, parameters that we're given, the problem to solve, and so that we can have the solution and find the solution. Because most of the time, obviously, our clients wouldn't come to us if they didn't need assistance, whether or not they just don't have the time to do it themselves, and
Right.
or whether or not it's just more complicated and complex, needing expertise on our part. So we
Sure.
tailor our process to work with them based on the needs of the project. So I think that's
Awesome.
part. And I had a conversation with somebody yesterday and asking me, like, how do you get new business? I was like, oh, that's a funny question because we've been around 29 years this year. I've been here about 19 of them. And we haven't had a salesperson, quote unquote, for a long time, but all of my people
Right.
effectively, I guess, obviously, we do sell products. Everybody's aware that they are in front of the clients and that their role is to do the best job they can to earn trust and build a relationship so that they come back again and again. And that has been an effective means to retain a sustainable business. And I continue to build relationships and invest in the community and give back and be
Mhm.
involved in civic organizations and boards and things like that, and encourage people to be involved. And I think it's just building those relationships slowly without cold calling people or having
Right.
to chase things necessarily has been a good way, because I'm not necessarily most comfortable person to just reach out to somebody blindly, because I
Right.
recognize when it
Right.
happens, you're like, I don't even know who you are and why do I want to work with you?
Exactly. Let's jump into the questions. I appreciate you setting that foundation. And I know we've got time goes by so quickly. I know we've got a number of topics to talk about, but I wondered if I could go a little bit out of order and jump to the one about, because everyone probably talks to you and asks you about this, just the hybrid work situation, a lot of your clients are repeat clients, but I bet their needs have changed or changed back since the pandemic. Is that just my thought was you have clients that maybe had open workspaces and then had to enclose them partially and then now want them back open, or do trends change that quickly, or how do you meet clients' needs that's 5 questions in one, but when life happens and that whole situation occurred, how does that impact how you meet what they maybe don't even know what their needs are?
Yeah, it's definitely been interesting for a long time prior to the pandemic, which is effectively 5 years ago now, which is hard to believe. The workspaces become significantly open with less barriers and less square footage afforded to individuals. And then obviously we had a period of time where things changed and significant amounts of people ended up in their homes in whatever setup they had, whether or not it was a kitchen. Mine was a kitchen table moved to a space initially because I was at home too with my kids. And then it was a little bit more legitimate setup that was more conducive to ergonomics. But that didn't last long for me, and I came back. But a lot of people, obviously, to this day, are still spending some or all of their time in a workplace that isn't a conventional office. And so that definitely changed the landscape of what the expectation of workplaces are. And also, initially, obviously, we were trying to give people 6 feet, and there was a lot of acrylic separation going up, and it was a little bit crazy just because this is uncharted territory as far as how to design with this in mind, as far as how things sanitize and all those things. So I'm glad that's behind us. I think we've all learned
Yeah.
some things, but I think the biggest impact with people coming back to spaces has been that maybe in some cases they have more people than they have spaces. So that's interesting because And in some cases, there's going to be workplaces where they have non-dedicated workstations or even unconventional workplaces altogether, where some people touch down a cafe or kind of a conference room or a huddle room or hotel or something like that. So they don't actually have dedicated workplace, which is different. And then obviously, depending on the type of organization, in some cases, people obviously still have dedicated spaces. But one of the things that I think is I've seen significantly, at least in our market, has been people increasingly want more acoustic privacy, as well as having just ability to focus. Because I think, at least in some people, my house was never very quiet when I was working from home because I had kids and dogs and stuff. But I guess in some cases, people are used to, maybe they can control the sounds or shut the door. But if you're coming back to open workplaces where you have coworkers and other in conversations, it's maybe harder to focus. There's more noise distractions. So we've seen an increased amount of need for adding elements to spaces that would give them ability to have better, and whether or not it's sound masking or acoustical panels, or putting in focus rooms, which are basically small rooms that one person can go into. Also, a big change towards a focus to wellness, mental health. I think it's become an enormous focus in the last 5 years, particularly, which is good because it was a problem before then. But I think the pandemic really shone a light on it because of the isolation people felt and the disconnection. So the great thing about a workplace is that it gives people the ability to connect. That's why I really prefer to be in the office, is because the amount of communication I can effectively have with somebody by getting up and walking over and to chat with them about something versus scheduling a time to have a call. But we get the opportunity to interact with other people and share our lives. We all come to work with our authentic selves, and some days are good, some days are bad. But if I'm at home and I'm by myself, I'm probably not speaking to anybody, whether or not, unless I'm on a call. And that's generally maybe not the opportunity where you get the before and after conversations. It's just a structured
Right.
1 hour hard start and hard stop.
Yeah,
Wellness
that
in the
makes sense.
workplace and giving people the ability to flex their time, and acknowledging that we all have lives outside of our work day. And sometimes it means that we have to take this doctor appointment, or we need to, do something for our kids or something like that. So significantly more flexible, focused, so that we make sure that everybody's the best self they can be. And I think that's definitely a trend that's not going to go away, I hope.
I hope
There's
so too.
certain elements that we can bring into workplaces that help with those things. But at the end of the day, it comes back to a company's culture. Historically, a lot of companies, is having we don't take lunch breaks, and we work till the day is done. Sometimes we're burning the candle at both ends. I've done that before, and I personally have faced burnout, and it's really no fun. Recognizing that we have to leverage our time in a way that we don't force ourselves into a health crisis, or
Right.
that our relationships don't suffer. So I think that maybe it's a softened idea as far as how we are. And just because everybody's cat has joined them in a Zoom call, or maybe their
Yeah.
kids have streaked across the thing. I think it's just
Right.
maybe blurred the lines. Not that there's shouldn't be professionalism, but on the other side,
Right.
people, just
Right.
recognizing that. So I think there's been, besides just people needing the ability to come to the space and have the ability to focus, or
Right.
and not feel distracted or that sort of thing, but also maybe the areas of respite, or places, different types of areas where people can break out, or even take a lunch break, or read a book, or listen to music during their off time, their break time,
Right.
and so
Right.
forth. So
That's cool. Let me ask you in regard to that about collaborating with I know you work closely, I would imagine, with a construction company, if it's a new build or a new Class A office or something, and you're also working with architects, and with all the very important objectives that you just mentioned, how important is it to come to the table early so that the values and the company culture and all that is embraced by all project partners early on? Because I would imagine the last thing you would want to see is where all of a sudden folks contact you and the building's done, the offices are fitted out, and they're like, we just need some furniture, or
Yeah.
it's too noisy in here. So I would think it would be in everybody's best interest to remember that this is an integral piece of the entire project. It needs to be looked at that way.
Yes, I think that is something, unfortunately, in our industry, being furniture ends up being categorized as a commodity, or it's like that we're vendors versus being a qualified partner or design, recognizing that we're design professionals. And obviously, you can spend a significant amount of sweat equity and thought equity into putting together a wonderful building and a great design, but if the execution of the interior spaces through furnishings isn't done well, or if you cut corners, your space can really suffer for, and it doesn't match the design intent of maybe what it was supposed to be. So I find that the most successful projects are one where we're engaged early in the process and we have the ability to share some of our expertise alongside of others a lot in a way that maybe a lighting expert or an acoustical expert or any other sort of consultant may come into it. Yes, we at the end of the day, we do sell the product, but sometimes it's minor tweaks that we can make in spaces to move walls, or obviously we can't move columns, but some of the most important things is just the integration of the infrastructure as far as where the data and the electrical are, because a lot of that is we have to power up our devices and we kind of live and die by
Right.
where we can get charged up, especially if we're mobile. And just the placement of those things are really critical in furniture spaces, and just the layout of workspaces and the flow of them, and even the selection of the finishes and the other elements of it can either be an asset or detract. Obviously, I hope we can probably get involved almost in any situation. However, I find that kind of before the groundbreaking is when they're still working in those through the construction document phases, and there's still some ability to possibly, hey, that door would be great if it was on the other side of the room, or had you considered doing this? I certainly don't like to overstep my boundaries, but if I see something that maybe would at least be worth evaluating, I try to, come to the table and speak up about those types of things. But I've had projects. Most recently, we did a project where we partnered with a construction company that we have had a relationship with a long time, and they invited us to the table, had early conversations with the client, worked closely with the interior designer and architect, and did require moving a wall just because we needed 6 more inches on something. And I feel like the execution of that project was probably one of the best that we've had recently, versus sometimes when you get called in, oh yeah, we need furniture and we need it now.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, there's
Yeah.
a specific duration of time that it takes in order to do that. So the more compressed it is to do, I'd say the less likely that we will have the best outcome.
Exactly. Gosh, we're already just about out of our time, but this has been so good to just visit with you, Yvette, about who Lauer is and how you all are consultants and you're not just commodity providers. You can really speak into a space and tailor it to the client. And seems like as more companies want people to be fully back in the office and engaged, that this would be a great way to recruit and retain as well. But we're glad
Absolutely.
that good. We're glad that you were with us today. This was a conversation with Yvette Paris, president of Lauer Facility Planning. And I hope you come back and join us again.
Yeah, thank you, Carrie. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Right back at you.